Let's finish the fantasy chapter. So we're playing the fantasy with the pawn to f3, and we'll finish the e6 line with knight c3, bishop b4, bishop f4, and the only move we haven't seen so far, which is one of the main moves, knight f6. So let's go through this. E5 is the move now straight away. Attack the knight. The knight has to move. The knight goes to d7. A3, attack the bishop. We're happy either way, whether they take us or not. So let's say, for example, they take back, and we're going to look at just a long line here with some variations just to see how to take this endgame. So we've got the bishop pair. There is no compensation for black. Black wanted to create the French center where they take the knight, and then the pieces come, let's say knight c6, and everything is closed. They want to come with the queen to a5, queen to a4, and so on. H4 straight away, knight c6, h5. Black has to play h6 now, otherwise we're going to play h6. So you know the goal is to play h6. Queen d2, castle, rook to h3. This is how we're going to be developing the pieces. We have a very easy plan. Attacking this diagonal, the rook is coming to g3, attacking over here, and the bishop is coming as well. This is a lovely, lovely position. So the bishop, you may argue, let's make a quick note on the fact that they can play c4. This is the type of annoying move, which is one of the reasons why they want to take the knight in c3, to close everything up, and this bishop doesn't play. However, you already have an attack. You can take the pawn. If they take back, queen h6, and it's game over, it's game over. The position evaluated plus 20, meaning the our opponent will have to give up the queen just to keep going. Here, after bishop takes h6, black can keep fighting and play f6. This will be the best moves according to the engine. You play rook to g3, finalizing the attack on the king. Rook to f7, and now you're forced to go back with the bishop. They take, you take, they can take the pawn back, but still now it's time to play h6. And now there is enough attack on that pawn. Queen to f6, joining the game, bishop g5. The queen will have to move. You develop the knight, and position is much better for white. Black can develop the bishop as well, bishop e2, rook f8, but f4 traps the knight. Here the best move according to the engine would be rook e8, but f4 still traps the knight. There are no other moves that make much sense in here. So we're gonna move on, and here instead of c4, let's look at f6. This is the suggestion of the engine. How do we go on here? You play rook to g3, already starting an attack on that pawn. The king goes to f7, best move according to the engine. And now you can take the pawn, they can take back. Knight to e2 developing, pawn takes, and now two options. Let's say, how can black go on? Let's say either moving the knight into the game or pushing the pawn to e5. If knight to b6, you play rook g6 attacking the queen, so that's what we wanted to do. Queen check, bishop blocks, the queen can win the pawn, but that's okay because knight to f4 and the queen will not have anywhere to go very soon. Queen f5, bishop to d3, finalizing the attack on that queen. Only way to react will be knight c4, but you move the queen safely, very quietly, and the queen is trapped. e5, only move to gain some compensation. You take the queen, they take your knight, you move backwards, they take your bishop. Losing a lot of material now, but we're still in great advantage. So there's no compensation. Back here, instead of knight b6, what about e5? Okay, it seems like this doesn't give us the possibility to play the slower plan, knight f4, bishop d3, rook g6, and so on and so forth. However, you take the pawn, knight takes back, rook to b1. And that paralyzes this bishop. The bishop can't move. What can be done now? Two options. If knight to c4, you take the pawn. There's nothing. Bishop blocks with development, check, and when the king moves, boom, you can take the bishop, sacrificing the queen, simply because there's going to be a checkmate to follow. So that means after rook b1, what about rook to d8? Protecting this pawn, this is the best move for black according to the engine. King to f2, d4 can now happen, and now you take, rook to b4, finalizing the attack on the isolated pawn. b6 to develop the bishop in fianchetto, take the pawn. Bishop to f5. The bishop now, the best move now is no longer from the fianchetto because of these two pawns, and also b6 was also there to stop the rook from winning the pawn with check. So bishop f5 is the best move. Queen to e3, giving up that pawn on purpose in order to play king g1 to get some more safety. Bishop back to f5. Rook to f4, pinning the bishop, and rook to d3, best move we're gonna have to move the queen back for a second, and the idea after rook a to d8 is to play rook h3 and exploit the pinned bishop. This is all considering that black will play only engine moves for 27 moves. That's very unlikely, and you know exactly the plans and how to take it, so you should win the game long before that. Back in this position, what if black takes with the knight? This is actually worse than taking with the queen. That means, how do we exploit this? Bishop d3, taking advantage of this weak king side. That's the importance of playing h5. Knight e7 to stop bishop g6 from coming. Rook h3, the idea play g4, g5. King to g8. Now you can't play that anymore, but you can take the pawn. Bishop takes, so it's a sacrifice, and black will have to play only engine moves to still be in a position of plus 1.5. So white is still better even after this sacrifice. It's perfectly theoretical. Take, queen moves with check, king has to move. That's the best way to block. Of course, you don't want to trade pieces. Bishop d7, rook b1, attacking the pawn. The pawn moves, check. King moves, and now rook to g3, and the checkmate is now unstoppable. So you notice how with perfectly natural looking moves from our opponent, they can end up in a massive defeat. So what exactly went wrong after rook to b1, b6? This was the move that caused the big trouble because of queen g5 check. So let's take it from here. Instead of b6, black playing the best moves would be rook a to c8. The reason is simple. Now, if we play queen g5, they play king f7, you give a check, takes, and king moves, and now g7. With rook to f7, black is safe, because when you play rook to h8, which earlier would have been the winning move at the end of this line, the queen was unable to reach the square c3 with a strong counterattack on our king. The queen was able to reach that square, but the rook wasn't there to cooperate. So this is all part of the black player will have to see all of this. So let's go back here. Rook a to c8, cooperating on this square with the future queen c3 move. This is very important. You take the pawn now, king to f7, and now rook to g3, cooperating on the g file. The king is forced to go to e8, and now rook to g7. The position is better for the white player. It was best not to give away this bishop this time. We're not going to move it from here. It needs to stay here and defend the king. Position is better for white. We're going to leave the line here because we've gone too far. So let's restart. We're playing the fantasy with f3, e6, knight c3, bishop b4, and now bishop f4, knight f6. Okay, e5, knight moves away, a3, and earlier we went through the bishop taking. What about bishop to a5, retreating? Okay, b4. The bishop has to move again, bishop b6, knight a4, attacking that bishop. We really want to take it. The bishop has to move again, bishop e3, castle, and now f4. Here's the thing. We have a lot of attack on the square c5 because that's what black wants to do. The only way to open the Caro Kann is to push c5, okay? Just like the French. So f6 now. Computer moves, you play knight f3. And let's say if they take, you take back. Already the position is +2 on the engine because black can't really move properly. b6 with the idea of playing c5, you play bishop to d3. And when they finally play d5, it's a little bit c5 is a little bit too late. You play knight to g5, taking advantage of these two big weaknesses. g6, but then you take here, queen moves, you win the exchange. There's no compensation whatsoever. And here after bishop to d3, you may argue, okay, c5 was not correct at that time. What about computer playing, some moves? Let's say, for example, queen e7, stopping the knight from endangering the e6 pawn and supporting also c5. What about playing that? Okay, castle, bishop to a6, best moves now according to the engine. The thing is, you're going to play knight c3 yet again and exploit the weak rook, and I'll explain. Bishop takes, queen takes, and now c5 appears to finally be possible. You need to play knight g5, threatening checkmate very cheekily. g6, and now you take the pawn, and we're winning material. If they take, you can take this pawn and one material. They cannot take back because of this, winning the rook. Let's go back here when we were in knight f3. After playing knight f3, instead of pawn takes e5, what about the best move according to the engine? Yet again, queen to e8 this time. So this pawn cannot be taken yet. Bishop to d3, that's what we want to do. b6, knight to b2 now. c5 appears to finally be possible, and black wants to develop the pieces. Finally, you play c3. Knight c6, castle. Finally, it seems like they can take, you take back, and queen to h5 can now happen. You play rook to f2, and it doesn't really look like black has done anything particularly wrong, except everything is in shambles. So after playing rook to f2, there is no moves for black. There are no moves for black. Try and find a move. Now, the only thing left to do, well, this bishop can't really go to b7, makes no sense, it does nothing, also abandons this pawn forever. There are no attacks. The only thing that black can try is a5 to counterattack on the pawn. Take, 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 maybe do a bunch of takes in an opening the center. You play b5, keep it closed. They have to move the knight. Knight to g5, making a threat on the square h7. They have to trade queens. Take, take, that's fine. Now, again, the double threat on these two pawns remains, so they have to take the rooks. Take, take, and now finally the black is able to play knight f8, where he seems to be defending everything. I can't make a circle here for some reason. So you take the pawn, take, take, and you won a pawn. They can't really take this pawn here now because of the knight. It is under attack. So knight g6, doubling the attack on that pawn. Bishop to d6 is the key move to keep the advantage. And when the bishop moves back, you're going to play knight to f3. Again, there is absolutely nothing here for black. No counterplay. We're winning this endgame easily. So let's restart, and we're playing f3, and now we'll look at g6. We haven't seen this before, and this is one of the main moves, okay? So they're going to develop the bishop from the fianchetto. Knight c3, bishop g7, and now e5 right away. This is how you play. We're going to look at three options roughly and how to take it from here. Let's say they play, for instance, f6, one of the main moves. Okay, let's make a brief mention of bishop f5. This is bad because of the fianchetto. So remember, punish this immediately with g4, because g4 does not make the white's position worse. Not at all. The bishop has to go back, so we want a tempo with a very useful move. Bishop e3, h5. These are computer moves. What to do now? Take and allow the rook to take, because this basically stops black from castling anywhere safely. This is a beautiful move, actually, to take the pawn in h5. Knight e2, bishop h6. These are the best moves to react. f4 is important not to allow that trade, because that will give the rook the freedom. We need to trap that rook. The bishop moves back to g4, pinning the knight. You move the queen away, and the knight is no longer pinned. So, and it's also protected by another knight. So if they ever take, then the subtle attack on the rook will remain. e6, knight g3, rook moves, queen f2, with an x-ray, x-raying that rook. Well, the bishop moves back. Best move according to the engine. h3 attacking the bishop. The bishop has to go, and now you have to play rook to g1. Queen develops, king to d2 is the best move. Now we don't care about losing the pawn in b2, because then we're gonna reach the 7th rank with the rook. Knight d7, you play a4, and knight to a. Obviously a4 is very useful move because our king is very safe, so we're not gonna try to castle. Knight to h6, you play f5, and yeah. So these are the we're still threatening the bishop. We're threatening to take the rook as well afterwards. You have to be careful here because black does have this move. It's all part of the plan. It's all white and black are playing the best moves here, so you can't take that knight because of pawn to d4, which is winning for black. You have to move back, and now we are indeed threatening some stuff. So the knight has to move, can attack the bishop and the queen. This is just black having to play really like an engine, so this is not gonna happen. But if you take, they take back. You counterattack on the queen, and the queen moves away. You move the queen back to safety. Take, all fine. And finally they can recapture the pawn, but you can take the bishop now. They take back, and you move the king back to safety. And this is a winning endgame for white, but only well, you have to consider that black will have played 25 stockfish moves. Not gonna happen. You're gonna win long before that, especially because you know what the plans are. So after a4, you might say, what about black castles? In which case we are under threat of losing this pawn. That's fine. You're gonna play knight f5. This was what we were threatening, which is the reason why black played knight h6 earlier. So knight f5 now wins the exchange. They have to take, you take the rook, and now they can take the pawn but attack the queen. The queen moves, play rook to b3, and you trade this endgame. You're going to be playing with the rooks. You're up the exchange. There's not really supposed to be any compensation here. So back in this position, so we're playing when black plays g6 as a third move. Knight c3, bishop e5. What about f6? Okay, so this is one of the main moves. f4. And so now they have to, well, this is computer moves only, bishop e6, h3. The knight can develop, and you play g4, and now the black pieces can't really move properly. Castle, knight f3, and now here c5 appears to be possible, so black can develop. You play queen to e2, putting the queen on this very profitable file. The thing is, after knight c6, e takes f6, and now we're attacking the bishop, so black is forced to take with the rook. This is just the engine trying to survive in a faulty variation, right? Remember, I play natural looking moves, and I go through as many lines as possible, and then whatever, and then I'll show what the best ways for our opponent to survive are. But then you can see how the spotless play of the engine punishes everything. Here you can make a fork, but knight to f5, so black will have to see all of this plan. You can still take the exchange. The move knight to g3, now making a fork, doesn't work because of the attack on the bishop with check. They have to take. So take, and now queen to g2. The bishop can recapture the pawn. You need to play h4 to stop the check. And the position is better for white. So we're going to leave this line there for a second, and if it comes up in the future, then I'll make more lines. Here after e5, what about the move e6? Seems to be the most natural. You play h4, and we're going to go to h5. So for example, let's say, okay, knight to d7, okay, you play h5, all right? So we know what the plan is. And black will have nowhere safe to castle. c5, the usual move, knight to b5. The bishop went in the fianchetto. Don't forget about the importance of the square d6. Takes, and now f4 to protect this pawn. This is very important. Takes. This is a potential sacrifice. You need to take that into account. Queen to d3 is the best move. The knight can get attacked. You play knight to f3, counter-attacking on the bishop. They can give a check. Did we just lose a piece? Was that a blunder? King to d1. They can take us, but now you can take the pawn. They cannot take with the h pawn because of the rook. Take with the f pawn. Queen to d4 will trap the rook if it weren't for the pieces that can get in the way. Queen to f6. You give check. Bishop moves. Check. King takes. Queen to b4, and this is a completely winning endgame for the white player. What is there left to do? Let's say the king moves to protect the pawn and prevent the arrival of the queen. Bishop to e3 with the threat of bishop to d4. Very strong move. You can't really play e5 because the queen gives a check in g4 and wins the game. Yeah, position evaluated +3 roughly. Because the black king is in really bad position. After queen to d4, what if they block with the knight? Okay, give a check anyway. They block with the bishop, check, take with the king, because otherwise they lose the knight. Bishop g5 finalizes the attack on that knight. This can be met with e5. So here you play queen to b4, and same thing. If they play bishop f4, now desperate for trades, you can take the pawn in b7 and carry on. It's a winning endgame. So back in this position, as soon as they play g6, you play knight c3, fianchetto, and then e5, and then they play e6, h4. What if they play h5, stopping the advance of the pawn? This is a very annoying move. You gotta know what to do now, how to take it. You gotta attack the queen. Bishop g5, take control of the dark squares. Queen moves, knight a4, attack the queen again, check. c3, the queen moves again. These are best moves. You play b3 to allow the knight somewhere to go. Knight d7, bishop d3. Always play bishop d3 when you see the pawns like this, always. b5 attacking the knight, knight b2. The reason is simple. That's why we play b3. We don't want to go to c5 if they can swap it, because then the e5 pawn becomes weak. Okay, we need that pawn to be protected by the other pawn. b4, best move according to the engine, because they want to dismantle, at least begin the dismantling of the pawn chain. Rook c1, take. Now, knight there is not possible. Knight e5 is not possible. Let's quickly mention first queen a5, pinning the rook. You play knight e2, defending it. c5 now appears to be possible. You play queen d2, and white is much better. So there was no attack, no concrete attack going on. Knight takes seems interesting because you take back and then they give a check, but you can block with the knight and you are protecting the rook. And they can take, but then you take, and they can take, and then you block, and then they take again, and they give a queen for a rook and two knights. Looks like it's a little bit too much to give, but queen c2 attacks the bishop and also the square c6, so we do have our compensation. Bishop g7, and now you take in c6, with a checkmate to come quite soon. Now we're gonna look at one line that goes with queen b6 straight away. I've actually encountered this quite a few times. It's not a good move, but let's see. Well, actually, there's nothing particularly wrong with that move either. That's why I'm actually not scoring very well against it. So knight c3, knight f6, g4 straight away. That's the move I recommend. Because what you do is you play a5 and then they move the usual knight to d7 and it becomes some sort of French. And the queen b6 move is perfectly fine in the French defense. So I don't want them to transpose into that. I play g4. They take, I play g5, okay? So the knight has to move, and now we recapture the pawn in the center, take, and here we are. g6, developing the bishop from the fianchetto, knight f3, bishop, g7, bishop g2, castle. Nothing special, we both have the bishop pair. White has a little bit more control of the center. Black appears to be able to play c5, bishop f4, and let's say a normal move like knight c6. How do we punish this? You play d5 in this position, so if they allow you, you should do that. And knight moves away, knight to e5, and this is a better position for white already. f6 to counterattack, take, and now rook to b1, counterattacking the queen. The queen moves again, so now you see that defense for black was faulty because early development of the queen. Knight f3, knight c4 seems possible, d6, we have a pass pawn, we're going to have to manage it well. Queen e8, queen d3 attacking the knight. Knight has to go back to b6 because it stops the rook from going further, allowing the development of the light square bishop. Rook fe1, bishop can develop, you play e5, and we'll take it from there because we've gone pretty far. Here in this position, instead of c5, a move that I found really annoying and I encountered in a game that I lost online, where they played e5. I completely didn't consider this move. What to play now? You play a4, and the reason is we need to get the queen away from that diagonal because she's annoying there. Bishop g4, pinning the knight. I found this really annoying. Bishop a3, now attacking the rook. If rook goes to d8, you attack it again. When they attack you, then you play bishop to f6. And now the problem of the central pawn does not exist anymore, and we're going to be trading bishop very happily. Here after bishop a3, if they play rook e8, which is the best move, you play rook b1, the queen finally has to go away. Now it looks like black can win a pawn. You have to play queen d3. If they take, and then they take, and then they take, you don't take back, because then black wins the pawn. You take in b7, and it's a dominant position, as you can see, because of the weakness in f7. Let's make now a brief mention of the move knight f6. So third move, knight f6 straight away. Play e5, knight d7, bishop to d3 in order not to make it a French Steinitz. e6, c3. They can go c5, they can do their best to make the game a French Steinitz as much as they want. We don't care. I'm going to play knight e2. So not the usual f4 move. Knight c6, and now f4 only comes now. The reason being that because black played the knight in c6, and now there was too much attack on this pawn, we had to play f4. But when they take, and knight to b4 now, attacking the bishop, it looks like we're going to have to give up that bishop, but it's totally fine. Knight c3, allow that trade and carry on with the game. What to play now? If they play f5, h4. So if the center is close, you play h4, attacking on the side, bishop e7, h5. Castle, and then you play h6. And when they finally play g6, they have to play g6, you play b3. And at least this is not a French Steinitz, and white is slightly better. We're gonna have to take the game from well, they play a6, the idea of playing b5 and get the pieces going, but you play a4 to stop that. And I guess I'll go deeper with this line in the future, but it's a bit rare, so let's not stay over there too long. So after queen d3, and what about instead of f5, what about they play bishop e7? Looks like a normal move, typical French move. There's nowhere else did it make sense to put the bishop. You play f5. So if you get the chance to play f5, you play f5, which is why, I just remember, that's why I looked at the move f5 by black. I found it annoying because I wanted to play f5 myself. Although that's what I learned, but then I forgot when it was time to play it in the game. So I keep forgetting my own studies. So castle, and now what to play? Let's say they play a6, just a random move. Okay, you play f6. So whatever move they play, if you get a chance to play f6, you play f6. Take, and now bishop h6, winning the exchange. If they move the rook, you play queen g3, and that's checkmate. If they move the king to save the game, you take the pawn, and now it looks like they can take back. Looks like a normal game. You win the exchange, take, and now queen to g3, and we're enjoying a winning endgame here. If so, back in this position, if they play pawn takes e5, you take with the rook. The thing is, the rook is defended by the queen, so there are no discovered attacks by the knight. Let's say knight c4, c5, e4. There's nothing that we have to worry about, because then you can just take the knight and then the rook is protected. Then rook e8, rook to f2, knight back to f8, the idea of going to e6, from where we will be able to go somewhere at least. Queen to f3. What to play now? If the knight does go to e6, you just win this pawn for free. Bishop to e6 to protect that pawn. Well, that means black is forced to go to g6 with the knight. Knight to f4, queen d7, best moves, take, we don't care. And now check, king has to move, queen to h5 is a dominant endgame by white. Let's make a quick mention of after f3, and then they can play knight to d7, for example. Okay, knight c3, knight f6, how to take this one. This is wrong because the d7 square, remember to punish the knight by playing e5 now, because they can't play knight d7, so the knight has to go to g8. Bishop to d3, e6, knight c to e2. This is important. You'll see why in a second. Well, because we want to play c3. c5, c3. It's important because the bishop needs to have a scope on this diagonal and also a shelter square to go back in case gets attacked by c4. Knight e7, rerouting. Let's say, for example, here if they take, there's you take back with the pawn to reinforce the pawn structure. There's nothing there. Knight e7, f4. Knight c6, and this is like a Steinitz, but we're up a tempo. Knight f3, bishop e7, castle, and now finally knight g5, finalizing the attack on the king side. What to do now? If they play, let's say, for instance, g6 to stop that, you play rook f3, and we're going for a very simple plan. Rook e8, h4, h6 to kick the knight away, you take the pawn. Hehe. King takes, and then you take this pawn as well. Hehe, I said hehe. King takes. Check with the queen. The king has nowhere to go except, well, the king could go to f7, but then the queen is infiltrating. So king g7, but then you move with the rook check. They have to block with the bishop, and you take like this, and you go into a winning endgame. You're going to recover everything that was lost. So after knight g5, if they attack it with h6, you have to move the knight back to f3, but you've created a weakness. Take, not a problem. f6, king h1. Get out of that diagonal because they want to take the pawn, and then bishop c5 and so on. I fell for that so many times. Queen e8, bishop to d2, develop. Knight b6, and now b3. This is how you want to take this. Bishop d7, develop. This is a very annoying setup that happens so many times, and I never know what to do. You want to take the pawn now. They take back with the bishop, for example. You play g4. The idea of playing g5, the bishop moves back, you play knight g3, and you're going to go to h5, and this is a favorable endgame for white. We're going to close the line because we've hit the 20th move, but positions evaluated +2, and it's very pleasant considering the numerous weaknesses. So the weaknesses around here, the weak pawn, the backward pawn. If you take in f6, what if they take with the rook? g4, the usual plan. Knight to b4, attacking the bishop. Take, and now knight to e5. Queen to f8, let's go on with the computer lines. Rook f3, bishop to d6, threatening our very strong knight, and get it out of the way. g5, we don't care. They can take, and now we play queen to g1. It's important not to take back because we don't want to lose material. When they take back, you can play rook to h3. Black is forced to give you the exchange with rook to f5 because of the threat on the square h7. Last but not least, let's make a mention of the move. So after f3, move e5. Remember, there might be other videos in the future when, because I've just recently started employing the fantasy. So when there will be other lines that right now I'm missing out, they will come with the passage of time. Remember to keep following and supporting the channel so I can bring more material to you. So after e5, this is an annoying move. You gotta take. They play queen to b6 now, knight to c3, and then they play bishop to c5. So the goal was to, well, there's a double attack on the knight, and you can't really play knight to f2. It's a horrible way to be checkmated very soon. So what you want to do here is you're going to play knight a4. Okay, so we play knight a4, check, king moves, and now queen to d4 will be the best move. Take, because obviously we were attacking the queen, and now f4 to support the pawn. What's going to happen now? Pawn takes, and now the bishop develops. They take, you take back. f6, and now you want to take this pawn as well. So the king goes in e4. Take, and now you take with the pawn. So they did succeed in isolating our pawn, but we're up a pawn. So that's the trade-off. So we have a weak pawn, but we can defend it. King to e3, back to e3 castle, rook to e1. If they play rook to d8, for instance, with the idea of playing bishop to f5 and going for this pawn, you play knight f3, bishop f5, you play knight c5, they can take the pawn, but you can take this one in position evaluated plus 350, so there's nothing there. If they play knight d7, developing, knight to f3, defend the pawn, knight check, king moves, rook, attacking the pawn even more, bishop c4, pinning the knight, important move, knight b6, take it, take back, and now bishop b3, and we are totally fine. Rook e7, doubling up on the isolated pawn. How are we going to do this? Rook h to f1, bishop to d7 to allow the other rook to come in, knight d4, the other rook is coming, c4, the knight has to move, the knight moves, c5 check, the knight goes back, take, they have an isolated pawn as well, and now you take that one, so now you're completely winning and you knew it. Looks like they can finally take the pawn, take, and now rook c1, going to c7. If they attack the knight with rook to e4, you're going to play king to d3, yes. And let's go back a second, when we were knight to c3, when we played knight c3 and they played bishop to c5, what if instead of bishop c5 they play d4, attacking the knight? I find this move very annoying. You gotta play knight to b1, knight to d7, and now you protect the pawn like that. Check, stop with the pawn, take, the bishop has to move away, black is being very annoying. Knight to h3 to stop the attack on f2, but it looks like we cannot castle. That's why I lost that game. I really didn't know how to continue, but now I finally do. E6, you see they play, they have to move, now you play f5, and now here the position is just dominating. The best thing to do at this point, let's make a random move for black. Because you see, you don't know how we're gonna castle, but it's actually very simple. Let's say black plays a6, you play knight d2, and then you're gonna play knight d3 and knight b3, and get rid of that annoying queen and bishop cooperation. So after f5, the best move according to the engine is to take the pawn. So you gotta be careful to this. You take back, so they sacrifice a piece for 2 pawns, but they have the bishop pair. Now after knight d2 they can even castle. It's logical to feel extremely under pressure in this situation, but you play bishop c4 and white is just better. You're gonna remove the bishop pair from them and you're gonna carry on like that, and you're actually completely safe. If they take, it looks like the knight is pinned, but you gotta check. The king moves, you take the knight, they can attack the knight because the knight was attacking the queen, you go back and you're winning this endgame.